My sister refused to help our parents while I went broke, supporting them. Then they told us the truth, and I, 33, have an older sister, Claire, 38. Growing up, we were close despite the 5-year gap between us. Claire was the high achiever, straight A's, got into a prestigious university, and now works a high-paying job as a tech consultant. I was always the artsy, go-with-the-flow type. I ended up becoming an elementary school teacher, and while I love my job, I don't earn nearly as much as she does. Our parents were supportive of us, but money was always tight. Dad worked at a factory that closed down when I was in high school, and it took him a few years to find stable work again. Mom worked as a secretary, but had to quit a few years back due to health issues. Now, they're both retired and living off a small pension and Social Security, but it's not enough to cover everything. A few months ago, they approached me and Claire, asking if we could chip in a bit each month to help cover their medical bills and some other expenses. I agreed immediately, but Claire was hesitant. She said she wanted to think about it before making any commitments, which I thought was fair. I figured she needed time to work out her budget or talk it over with her husband. But weeks turned into months, and whenever I brought it up, she'd dodge the question or say something like, "I'm still figuring things out." Meanwhile, I've been sending our parents $300 every month, which is honestly straining my finances. I decided to confront Claire about it last week, and things didn't go as I expected. Last weekend, we had a family dinner at our parents' place. At some point, Mom mentioned how grateful she was that I'd been helping with the bills, and Dad nodded along, looking teary-eyed. It was really touching, but it made me feel awkward because I knew Claire hadn't contributed anything yet. After dinner, I asked Claire if we could talk privately. I told her I was struggling to keep up with the monthly payments on my own, and that I really needed her to step up. She immediately looked defensive and asked, "Why are you bringing this up now? We're at Mom and Dad's place." But I didn't want to keep dancing around the topic, so I just laid it out there. "It's been 3 months, Claire. They need help, and I can't do it alone." She sighed and said, "It's not that simple. I have my own family to take care of, and we have expenses too." I was floored. Claire and her husband, James, own a 4-bedroom house, go on multiple vacations a year, and recently bought a new car. Meanwhile, I'm still renting a tiny apartment and rarely eat out to make sure I have enough for our parents. I told her, "I get that, but we're talking about $300, Claire. That's not a lot compared to what you make." She frowned and said, "You don't know what I have going on, okay? Just because I make more money doesn't mean I have to support them." That's when things really blew up. I told her I felt like she was being selfish, especially since she's always been the successful one in the family. I said, "You're making over 6 figures, and I'm barely scraping by. I shouldn't have to choose between paying rent or helping our parents because you're refusing to pitch in." She shot back, "It's not my fault you chose a low-paying career. You made your own decisions. Just because I make more doesn't mean I owe anyone anything." I was stunned. She'd never spoken to me like that before. I didn't know how to respond, so I just left. I barely remember the drive home. I was so shaken up. All I kept thinking was how unfair it felt. I'd always looked up to Claire, but hearing her say those things made me see her in a completely different light. For the next few days, I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I'd pushed too hard. Was I the one being selfish? Was it wrong to expect her to help just because she could afford to? At the same time, I felt really bitter. I love my parents, and I want to help them, but I feel like I'm being punished for not being as financially successful as my sister. I started wondering if maybe Claire resents having to be the golden child, or if there's something deeper going on that she hasn't shared with me. But how do I even bring that up after the way our last conversation went? I decided to text her to clear the air. I apologized if I came off too strong and said I just needed her support, not just financially, but emotionally. She didn't respond. A few days later, I saw a social media post from her. She and James had gone to Hawaii for a week-long vacation. The pictures of them on the beach, smiling and happy, stung more than I'd like to admit. Now I'm left at a crossroads. I can't keep this up financially, but I'm terrified of what will happen if I stop helping our parents. I'm also not sure how to approach Claire again without making things worse. I tried talking to my parents about it, but they just said, "We're sure she'll come around," which only made me feel more alone in this. I hate that this is tearing our family apart. I want to believe Claire's a good person and that there's some reason she's not helping, but I can't shake the feeling that she's just choosing not to. It's made me question everything about our relationship, and I'm not sure if we can go back to how things were. It was clear that I couldn't just give up on this, not when our parents were caught in the middle. I reached out to Claire and suggested we meet up, just the two of us, away from our parents and our partners, to really talk things through. I half expected her to brush me off or come up with some excuse, but to my surprise, she agreed. We met up at a cafe we used to go to all the time when I was in college, a cozy spot tucked away from the busier parts of town. It felt surreal being there, almost like we were stepping back into a time when things between us were simpler. After we ordered our drinks, there was this awkward silence between us, neither of us knowing how to start. Finally, I just said it. "I miss you, Claire. I miss us. This whole situation is really stressing me out, and I just want to understand what's going on." She looked down at her coffee, swirling it around in the cup, before sighing. "I miss you too," she murmured, her voice softer than I'd heard in a long time. "But it's complicated, you know?" I leaned forward, genuinely trying to get where she was coming from. "Help me understand, then. Why don't you want to help them? What aren't you telling me?" Claire took a deep breath, and for a second, I saw something like guilt flicker across her face. "It's not that I don't want to help them. It's just, I feel like I've been doing everything for everyone for so long. When I got that job right out of college, do you know what Mom and Dad did? They asked me to help pay off their mortgage, and I did it. They didn't even ask if it was okay. They just assumed I would. That was news to me. I'd known she'd help them out here and there, but I never knew it went that far. But that was years ago," I pointed out gently. "They're in a different situation now." She nodded, looking conflicted. "I know, and I don't resent them for needing help. But I guess I've always felt this pressure, like I'm the one who has to keep everything together. I was paying for their bills and then putting money aside to help you when you were struggling after that bad breakup. I don't regret it, but it's made me feel like I have to be the one who's always on, you know?" Hearing this side of her made me feel a pang of guilt. I never realized how much she'd been quietly carrying on her shoulders. "But you've done so well for yourself, Claire," I said softly. "You've built a great life. No one's expecting you to sacrifice everything." She looked up at me, eyes glassy. "You say that, but that's not how it feels. Sometimes it feels like I'm a paycheck, not a person. Like my worth is just tied to what I can give, not who I am." Her words hit me hard. I'd never thought about it from that perspective. To me, Claire had always been this powerhouse, the one who could do it all. But maybe I'd been blind to how much of that was a facade. "I'm sorry," I whispered, feeling the weight of my own assumptions crash down on me. "I didn't know you felt that way, but you should have told me." Claire shrugged, her expression sad but resolute. "How could I? It's not like I could just say no to Mom and Dad when they needed help. And it's not like I could leave you high and dry when you were in a rough spot. But I also have my own family now, and I have to think about their future, too." We sat there in silence for a moment, the hum of the cafe filling the space between us. For the first time, I saw Claire not as the older sister who had everything together, but as someone struggling to balance it all, someone afraid to admit she needed a break. "I don't want you to feel like you have to be the only one holding everything up," I told her. "If we split this, I promise I'll do my best to shoulder my share. You're not alone, okay?" Claire gave me a small, tentative smile. I know. I just needed to hear it. We talked for a while longer that day, really opening up for the first time in what felt like years. I learned that Claire had been putting money into a college fund for her 2 kids, and that she and James had been saving to start their own business. It wasn't that she didn't want to help. She just didn't want to be taken for granted either. We agreed to set up a proper plan. I'd continue giving $300 a month, but Claire would match it with $400 since she could afford a bit more. We'd revisit the arrangement every few months to make sure it was still manageable for both of us. Most importantly, we'd both talk to our parents about being more transparent with their finances, so we weren't blindsided by sudden expenses again. I'm cautiously optimistic that things will be better now. It's not perfect, but it feels like a step in the right direction. There's still a part of me that's a little resentful, but I'm trying to let it go. I can't change the past, but I can work on making things right now. Just when I thought Claire and I had found some common ground, something completely unexpected happened. A few days after our cafe meetup, I got a call from my parents. I figured it would just be one of our usual chats. Dad asking how work was going, or Mom giving me updates on their garden. But right away, I could tell something was off. Dad's voice sounded strained, like he was holding something back. "Honey, we need to talk to you and your sister about something important," he said slowly. "Can you both come over this weekend?" I immediately felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" I asked, my mind racing through possibilities. Was Mom's health getting worse? Did something happen with their house? Dad hesitated before responding. "It's just something we should discuss in person. I've already spoken to Claire. We'll talk about it together." I hung up, my heart pounding. What could possibly be so urgent that it required a family meeting? I tried calling Claire, but she didn't pick up. It was strange because usually even if she was busy, she'd text me back right away. I was left stewing in my own thoughts until Saturday, when we all met at our parents' place. The atmosphere was tense as soon as I walked in. Claire and James were already there, sitting stiffly on the couch. My parents looked uncharacteristically serious, and I could feel the weight of whatever they were about to say pressing down on the room. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance before Dad cleared his throat. "We wanted to talk to you both about our finances." I nodded, but before I could say anything, Claire spoke up, her voice tight. "Dad, just get to the point." He sighed deeply, like he was bracing himself for something painful. "We've been struggling more than we let on. There were some investments we made a few years back that didn't pan out. We lost more money than we could afford." My mind spun as I tried to process what he was saying. "What do you mean lost money? How much?" I asked, looking between them and Claire, who seemed far less surprised than I was. Dad winced. "Almost everything we had saved." "What?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say something sooner?" Mom, her eyes glistening, spoke up then. "We didn't want to worry you girls. We thought we could recover, but it just kept getting worse." The floor felt like it was shifting beneath me. "Is that why you needed us to help with bills?" I asked slowly, feeling a mix of confusion and anger. "You weren't just short on money. You were broke." Claire sighed, rubbing her temples like she was trying to stave off a headache. "They told me a few weeks ago," she said quietly, finally looking me in the eye. "That's why I was hesitating about giving more money. I wasn't sure how deep this went, and I wanted to talk to them first. I felt like I'd been hit with a tidal wave. All this time, I'd been so focused on Claire's reluctance to help, thinking she was just being stingy when in reality, she'd been grappling with the fact that our parents were in much worse shape than we thought. "But why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and betrayal. "We're supposed to be a team, Claire. I shouldn't have been kept in the dark." "It's not that simple, Maddie," Claire said softly. I was trying to figure out the best way to handle this. It's not just about giving them money. We need to figure out a long-term solution. My parents looked down, guilt etched into their faces. "We're sorry," Mom whispered. "We just didn't want to put this burden on you. We already asked so much of Claire in the past. And Maddie, you've been so kind, helping every month. But you should have told me," I insisted, feeling tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "I've been struggling, thinking I was helping with a few extra expenses. If I'd known how bad things were, we could have—" I paused, my voice breaking. "We could have done something." The rest of the evening was spent unraveling the full extent of the situation. My parents explained that they'd made a series of bad investments a few years back, thinking it would help them retire more comfortably. But when the investments went south, they tried to make up for it by pulling from their savings, eventually draining most of it. "Why didn't you at least talk to a financial advisor?" Claire asked, clearly struggling to keep her frustration in check. Dad shook his head. By the time we realized how bad it was, we didn't think anyone could help. There were so many emotions swirling around me. Anger at them for not being honest with us, guilt for not realizing something was wrong sooner, and a deep, gnawing fear of what this meant for all of us going forward. "What do we do now?" I finally asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Claire looked at me, then at our parents. "We need to sit down and figure out a sustainable plan. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick, but we can't keep throwing money at this blindly." I nodded slowly. "Okay, but we do this together. No more secrets. No more handling things alone." For the first time that evening, Claire gave me a real smile, small and tired, but genuine. Together, since our parents' revelation, everything has felt surreal. Like I'm in a dream that's both comforting and suffocating at the same time. Comforting because, finally, there are no more secrets. Suffocating because the reality we're dealing with is so much heavier than I imagined. The first few weeks after the big reveal were chaotic. Claire took the lead, scheduling meetings with the financial advisor and making a plan to help our parents gradually pay down their remaining debts. I've been there at every meeting, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm just along for the ride, still trying to catch up emotionally. I'm proud of Claire for how she's handling things, but I also feel a pang of resentment. Resentment that I couldn't be the one to step up first, that she's the one taking control while I'm still struggling to make sense of it all. In the midst of all this, I've been avoiding one difficult conversation, talking to my parents about what this means for me and my future. With the monthly payments we're both making, I can barely keep up with my own expenses. I know I'm doing the right thing by supporting them, but deep down, I'm scared that I'm compromising my own financial security. So last night, I decided to have the talk I'd been dreading. I went over to my parents' house alone, not wanting Claire to be there as a buffer. They seemed surprised to see me without my sister, but welcomed me in warmly. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd shared countless meals and conversations growing up. I couldn't help but think how different it felt now, heavy with the weight of what we had to discuss. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you both," I began, my voice wavering slightly. They exchanged a nervous glance before turning their attention back to me. "What's on your mind, honey?" Dad asked, his tone gentle. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. "I want to keep helping you. I really do. But I need to be honest. I can't keep doing this at the same level I have been. I'm barely making ends meet myself, and I'm worried about what that means for me." Mom reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes filled with guilt and understanding. "Oh, Maddie, we never wanted you to put yourself in a difficult position for us. We thought we could manage things, but we were wrong. And we don't want you sacrificing your future because of our mistakes." Dad nodded solemnly. "We appreciate everything you and Claire have done, more than you know. But your mother's right. We need to find a way to manage without leaning on you so much." Their words were comforting, but they also made me sad. It felt like they were saying, We've already burdened you enough. Don't give us more of yourself. I realized, though, that this was something I had to let go of. The feeling that I had to save everyone, even if it meant breaking myself. What if we cut back? I suggested, swallowing the lump in my throat. I can still help, just maybe a little less each month. I don't want you to feel like I'm abandoning you. I just need to find a balance that works for all of us. There was a long pause. I could see Mom fighting back tears, and Dad's face was drawn tight, like he was holding in something he wanted to say, but couldn't. Finally, he exhaled slowly. Maddie, your mother and I have been talking, and we think we need to consider selling the house. I stared at them, stunned. Sell the house? But this place, it's your home. Dad nodded slowly. It is. But it's too much for us now. The maintenance, the property taxes, we just can't keep up. If we sell it, we could move into a smaller apartment or condo, something more manageable. It would mean no more mortgage, and we could live off what's left from the sale. Mom squeezed my hand again, her grip trembling. We've been clinging to this house because it's where we raised you girls. But it's just a building. You and Claire are our home now. We need to be realistic about what we can afford. I felt my chest tighten. The idea of selling our family home felt like losing a part of my childhood, of the memories that made me who I am. But I couldn't deny the logic of it. The house was too big for just the two of them, and downsizing would give them a chance at financial stability. Still, it hurt to think of someone else living in the place where I'd spent so much of my life. Are you sure? I asked softly, tears welling in my eyes. I don't want you to feel like you have to give up everything because of this. Dad's expression softened. Maddie, we're not giving up. We're choosing to start fresh. And maybe this is what we need, a chance to let go of the past and build something new. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and hope. Maybe this was a fresh start for all of us, a way to break free from old expectations and create something better, even if it looked different than what I'd always imagined. The decision wasn't made overnight, but over the next few weeks, my parents started seriously looking at their options. Claire and I helped them contact a realtor, and we started the emotional process of preparing the house for sale. Every item we packed up seemed to carry a memory with it, but with each box, I felt a little bit of the burden lifting, like we were shedding the weight of the past. Claire and I had another heart-to-heart during this time, too. I finally shared how much I'd been struggling, not just financially, but emotionally, trying to live up to the image of being the good daughter. Claire admitted that she'd felt trapped in the role of the responsible one for so long that she didn't know how to ask for help herself. It was like we'd both been living under the same unspoken expectations, but in different ways. I'm proud of you, Maddie, she said one evening as we packed up old photo albums, for speaking up, for being honest about what you need. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. And I'm proud of you, too, for being here, for doing all of this, even when it was hard. Maybe we weren't perfect sisters, but we were learning to be better, and that felt like a victory in itself. Now, the house is officially on the market. It's bittersweet, but it feels like the right thing to do. My parents are actually looking forward to finding a smaller place where they can start fresh, without the stress of maintaining a large property. And Claire and I have decided to step back a little from our financial contributions for now, focusing instead on helping them transition and setting up a solid budget. It's not going to be easy, but for the first time, I feel like we're all on the same page, working together instead of against each other.